and welcome to this week's series of Realism Tips. This week we are going to be investigating how to act in different biomes that Beasts of Bermuda have to offer. In this particular case, we are going to be focusing exclusively on our desert region here. Deserts, of course, are known to be very hot, reaching scorching temperatures every day, in which case you can easily dehydrate. However, these same horrible conditions can often lead to these kinds of bleak desert landscapes and lack of water resources. So if you find yourself in a desert, don't hesitate to look like you are struggling for sustenance. So you can act dehydrated, especially if you're an animal that is semi-aquatic. You can struggle to do activity that you would normally do, especially in the heat of day. So a good way to kind of mimic getting additional water would be directly from plant sources too. So agave and other cacti can offer sources of water for animals sometimes. But keep in mind too that if you happen to step on them, cacti can hurt. So it's better to just avoid those kinds of things altogether, just to prevent the prickly pokeness of that. Even small injuries, even on very large animals like an hippopotamus, can lead to infection and therefore illness. So it's better to just avoid taking risks altogether and to try and avoid those objects that will hurt you. Even some of these kinds of trees, more specifically these kinds over here, could be kind of prickly, similar to acacia trees in real life. So again, maybe it's better to avoid browsing those or using those as your scratching post. Just little things to bear in mind there. Deserts as a whole too can provide their own kind of nutrition. So animals, especially large herbivores like the Apatosaurus, wouldn't necessarily migrate through a desert like this on their own, especially for no reason. It just doesn't offer a lot of food. Water that they need to survive in this kind of heat would be very scarce, but maybe there is still a reason to migrate through here besides just trying to avoid certain hotspots or predators. So, in particular, herbivores will need salt to live. Salt can be found really anywhere on the map where there's ocean water, but in places like the desert, you can even mimic getting it off of resources like this rock here. Just double tap your E button to do the kind of eating behavior. Oop, I got a bush there. To mimic the kind of eating or licking behavior off of any kinds of rocks. And hope that you don't end up with a flower head. I was wondering where I'm duplicating that from now. So that's just one reason why herbivores may choose to travel to a desolate region like this. There could be salt and other minerals available to them that they couldn't easily get otherwise, and so it's just better to try and think of reasons like that for why your dinosaur may be risking going through an area like this. Of course, there are ways that you can try and mitigate the heat. So one way that you could try and mitigate the heat would be traveling during cloudy days or just trying to avoid midday. And if you are traveling midday, you could try and get to places of shelter. Not that Apatosauruses would really get that. And laying down in the shade and trying to avoid overly exerting yourself. You could even take a nap to try and siesta yourself through the hottest times of the day. Animals like Apatosaurus that wouldn't really have that option or that luxury could still try and get their own sort of sunscreen or sunblock in the way of the sand and mud itself. So you could try flicking your tail to whip up the sand and cover yourself with it. You could even mimic using your tail as a sort of fly swatter to prevent flies from settling down on your very hot body. And you can also more directly just dust bathe yourself by lying down in patches of sand and otherwise rubbing yourself in it and just kind of getting up and then doing that a few different times. by whipping up this kind of sand and dust onto yourself, you're able to more effectively shield yourself from the heat. You can also use Apatosaurus's other abilities, such as to kick up dust onto yourself, or even to kind of mimic scraping out a little hollow for you to then bathe yourself in, or even to shelter in during the worst parts of the heat. The next wing I don't think is going to be super helpful here, but you probably could use that to mimic trying to get some dust up on yourself. It just feels a little bit too aggressive to be really using for this purpose, as it really just kind of looks like you're beating your head against the sand and rock, and I don't know that that's going to be super comfortable. You could, of course, bathe in any water you come across, but I wouldn't recommend using salt water, as if you do have any kind of sunburn or other like skin lesion that comes from being exposed to the sun, the salt water could burn that and your dinosaur may not like that. Of course, you could still mimic this by going out into the ocean and three-calling and swatting and kicking up a ruckus and just being like, oof, this hurts. Of course, going out into the salt water could also prevent infection on that sore or wound or abrasion. So you could also roleplay it that way, where those that go into the ocean do not get sick or infected, and those that don't go in the ocean do get sick or infected from it. Occasionally you will find these little sand pits, and these are going to be the perfect place to mimic that rolling behavior in. Of course, it is quicksand, so use these with a bit of grain of salt, or sand in this case, and just do what is safe and realistic for your dinosaur. But laying down in places like this could be a very nice relief for your dinosaur who's been traveling very long and hard through places like this. And this in particular, you can kick up a little bit better than actual terrain you could come across in game, so you can kind of make your own bed here even. Really, it's just whatever you can find. The desert is a very harsh ecosystem, but plenty of life makes its home here. They just have to do things a little bit differently than other locations. Just bear that in mind whenever you're coming across it, living in it, or migrating through it. Additionally, animals that are migrating through it may even present different behavior adaptations through this area that they learned from their parents and were passed down through generations. So you can also take that kind of custom and learn behavior into it too. Maybe you don't know any of these things, maybe you have to figure it out, and then you can pass that on to others around you. It really just depends. We certainly think of deserts as very warm and arid areas, and this is certainly true in the daytime. However, this isn't always the case. At nighttime, it can get to very, very cold temperatures, especially for small-bodied animals, especially ones without feathers, like our little velo here that are completely scaled, or even some larger animals can really feel the effects of the chill. So don't forget to hunker down in deserts during the nighttime, or if there is one of those rare bad storms. That way you can stay nice and warm and cozy. You can also cuddle up to a packmate if you have one available to you, and you can proceed accordingly from there, just trying to stay warm. And even just staying on the move and staying active will help keep your body temperature up. So bear this in mind during the nighttime of our favorite desert regions here. Of course, as it starts to get lighter and starts to get warmer, you don't have to worry about staying as cold. Traveling through the desert sure can be taxing. Don't be afraid to reflect this in your body language as you walk. You can lower your head and use the screenshot function in order to mimic exhaustion, or like you're being worn down by your surroundings, just like I am now. My Apatosaurus certainly looks like they're having a rough time out here in the harsh sun and could probably use a good drink of water. And of course, as we come out to the ocean, you find salt and even shells. We've talked about reasons for herbivores coming out to the desert, but there are reasons that carnivores may as well. So if they're following a migrating herd, the desert is going to be the place where you are most likely. to encounter an animal that would die of its own natural causes. There's just a lot of reasons for especially large herbivores like the hippopotamus to just fall ill and die here. Not enough resources, just generally lack of heat or exposure could kill an animal. So it could be very easy pickings for a carnivore to come through here. But you could also play it off as that there's this valuable resource for them to get here that they may not be able to otherwise. Just like herbivores can get salt here, carnivores may be able to get extra calcium off of the rocks or the conch shells that are about. And this calcium could be what causes them to lay very good eggs, or very poor eggs, depending on if they don't get enough calcium. So maybe coming out here and eating these shells is actually the main draw for carnivores. Just try and think of little different ways like that may be helpful for acting out this particular kind of gameplay. Again, of course, you can get salt really anywhere as an herbivore, but it's kind of nice to think about salt as being the main and even only reason that you would migrate to and through a desert. Just think of little ways to interact with the world around you, and you'll be a much better actor for it. But I think I will go ahead and leave this off here. If you have any of your own tips, please don't hesitate to reach out to me with those. You can leave those in the Google Forms and Discord itself. And if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to ask them down in the comments or in the Acting Questions channel of the Discord, as that is going to be the place for a lot of those questions to be seen and answered. But otherwise, I hope that you all have a great rest of your day or night. Stay safe out there, and I will see you all in the next Realism Tips episode.